What's happening, friends? Welcome back to the Banker Hippo YouTube channel. I'm Bryce, and this is episode 43 of Women's Soccer World, where we talk all about the world of women's soccer and all the glorious things going on within it. Our Olympic coverage is going to conclude today, which I know what you're thinking. Sad face, the Olympics has come to an end, but this was a ton of fun and another great tournament to go through, so I want to thank you all for joining me on this journey. And with that, having said that, let's get into the episode. First, we're going to talk about the U.S. Women's National Team versus Canada match. We're going to wrap that up in some of those thoughts. We're going to do the same for the U.S. Women's National Team versus Australia bronze medal match. And then I'm just going to give some overall thoughts about the tournament for the U.S. in general. First, the winner of the tournament was Canada. They emerged victorious over Sweden on penalties in the gold medal match. So good for Canada on that. And I got to give mad props to Canada for this tournament. I did not anticipate that they would be the winners by the time this was all said and done. I knew that they were going to be a solid team going into this tournament, but like I said, they never really showed even along the way that they were going to be capable, I guess, of winning the tournament. A lot of times they would have a minority of the possession. A lot of times they'd only have a shot or two a game, and they would still find a way to either win on penalties or just score the one goal they needed to win. So they really quietly won this tournament, and I got to give them mad props. And I'm sure Christine Sinclair is super pumped, because I wouldn't be surprised that this was her last major tournament. So enough about that. Let's get into the U.S. Women's National Team versus Canada match, which was the semifinals, in which Canada ended up besting the U.S. by a scoreline of 1-0. My overall thoughts on this match, despite the result and the way that the games have been going up to this point, I want to say I don't think that the U.S. actually played all that bad. Let me explain a little bit more. They had a majority of the possession. If I'm not mistaken, they had 52% possession to Canada's 48, and they also had like quadruple the shots that Canada had. I believe they had 17 shots to Canada's 5, and then I believe it was 6-2 when it comes to shots on goal. Let me double check my notes real quick. I'm sorry. It was 56% possession for the US, 17 shots, and 6 on goal. While for Canada, it was 44% possession, 6 shots in total, and 2 on goal. So the US had a lot of chances in order to score in this game. However, I think Megan Rapinoe really summed it up best in her post-match interview. It just wasn't clicking for them. And I would completely agree with that. There were many points where, again, they had this problem in this game where the passes weren't quite right. Through balls would always go awry. Even just normal passing just to get the ball into the final third and maneuver through the final third were a lot of times just not quite on the mark, and the U.S. just couldn't recover. It would be, especially in the second half, it would be this repeated pattern of Canada would give up the ball, U.S. would have it, U.S. would coordinate an attack, then give it away on a poor pass. Then the process would just repeat, and I swear it was from like the 50th minute to the 80th minute where this kept occurring, all the way pretty much up until the penalty was earned by Deanna Rose in next to Tierna Davidson. And let's actually kind of jump into that penalty really, really quickly. I initially watching it thought that it was a really weak call. It, to me, looked like Deanna Rose kind of sold it a little bit in terms of the theatrics. However, when they did go to VAR and they took a second look at it, I did not realize Tierna Davidson had actually undercut Deanna Rose's leg, which would prompt the penalty call. So I would support the call, which, as a U.S. fan, myself included, obviously, in that argument, you can kind of grumble like, oh, of course, the first time they have, or the second time, I should say, the second time they have VAR comes back to bite the U.S. in that case. But overall, like I said, it was a good call nonetheless. It was the right call. And I got to give it to Fleming. She had a phenomenal penalty to go ahead and end up sealing the win for Canada. Top right bins. Adriana Franch, I got to give it to her. She did a good job of at least guessing where the ball was going. It's just there's no saving that penalty from that close. It was a rocket. It was exactly where she needed it to be in order to get the job done. A little side note, this was also the game that we saw Listener go down with an injury in the first half, which the injury looks to be somewhat severe. I mean, she was walking on crutches by the time the game was over. I'm not exactly sure what injury she sustained. I don't think it was a ligament injury, but it was some sort of hyperextension of her knee where she couldn't end up finishing the tournament. But I guess out of all times to really get injured, you'd rather be hurt at the end of the tournament rather before it starts and at the beginning. So take that for what you will. I hope a listener has a really speedy recovery in that respect. I thought Adriana Franch held her own playing as well. I thought she played well. And Adriana Franch, I think, is a world-class goalkeeper that often gets overlooked, which I guess you can understand because she's been pretty much injured for like the last year and a half leading up to the Olympic competition. So take that for what you will. But I was happy to see her play, and I was happy to see her do okay. So good on her for that. One thing I kind of glossed over too when it comes to the US's chances in this particular match, their set pieces actually weren't too bad. There's a few that come to mind for me where Julie Ertz actually had a couple of headers on target or got her head to the ball in dangerous spots. So we can kind of see some vintage Julie Ertz get in there and making a difference on those set pieces and causing havoc. And you could almost make the case for Lindsay Horan too. There were a couple of times she had a header in some dangerous spots as well. So like I said, the U.S. just had a lot of chances. It's just like Megan Rapinoe said, it wasn't clicking for them and they just couldn't get over the line. And sometimes a penalty is all you really need to win the game. And as I mentioned earlier with Canada, they've been doing this all tournament long. They've been playing their game, which is kind of letting their opponents have the ball, have a majority of the possession, let them be on the front foot, and then just get in a goal or just win on penalties and score when they need to. And they played in a really weird way their game this time around. So I got to give it to them. Their plan worked and they came out victorious and they ended up winning it all. So there's not much really left to say other than that. So let me just double check my initial thoughts or my final thoughts for this particular game. Yes, there's one other thing I want to say which I think sank the hearts of all of us. Right after Fleming scored her penalty, about 10 minutes later, Megan Rapinoe had a wonderful cross to Carli Lloyd, who just crushed the crossbar. And at that point, I think that really sums up the tournament for the U.S. in general. I think that was the third time that they've hit the post or the crossbar in this tournament. They hit it twice against Sweden, so I guess you could really say for them, to some extent, if you told me that the U.S. was unlucky at some points in this tournament, I think you'd be right, and I think that's a fair statement, especially since when you hit the post that many times in really opportune moments, that really sucks. If you go all the way back to the first game of this tournament against Sweden, it was 1-0, Rose crushed the post, and that could have tied the game right before half and really changed the course of the entire tournament. So, and then we fast forward to now with Carli Lloyd getting her header that would have tied the game off the crossbar. So it's like, it's just football. In a word, just football. That's just kind of how it goes sometimes. Do I want to attribute the results of the U.S. entirely due to luck? Absolutely not, because I don't think that they had a particularly great tournament, but I'll touch on that a little bit later on. But overall, my friends, I don't think the U.S. played poorly. I think that they just couldn't quite click offensively. Some of their passes went awry, and they just weren't able to put it together. But that's just my thoughts on the match. I want to know what you made of the Canada match, though. Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. All right, so kind of transitioning over into the bronze medal match now between the U.S. and Australia. This was a much more exciting match than the previous one between these two in the group stage. This one ended in a 4-3 win for the U.S. And for me, this might be a little controversial, but I'm going to stick with it. I think that the U.S. kind of, in a really weird way, had a combination of making their opponents pay for their mistakes, but also their opponent kind of giving them the game. You could make the argument that 3 out of the 4 goals that they had were due to Australia making mistakes. We had Megan Rapinoe's Olympico, who scored directly off of a corner. For those of you who don't know what an Olympico is, it's when you score directly off of a corner. If I'm not mistaken, feel free to correct me down in the comments. But then we had a clearance that went awry that Megan Rapinoe volleyed into the top bins of the net, which is really, really sweet. I made a short TikTok video about that, and I also made a YouTube short video about that, so if you haven't seen it yet, it's on there. But then we also had a wayward pass from the back line, again from Australia, that Carli Lloyd made them pay for and scored her second goal of the match. So when the match ends 4-3 like that, Australia's got to be kicking themselves in the butt, because if they don't have some of those miscues, there's a chance that they win this game and actually go home with a medal. And Australia, they've come so far as a team in recent years, and for them to get this close and kind of blow it for themselves really, really sucks. Then again, I don't want to be too harsh on them because I don't really think they played that bad of a game. In fact, all their goals that they scored this game were quite fantastic. Sam Kerr, she scored in the 17th minute. Fun fact, she became Australia's all-time leading scorer with that goal. Caitlin Ford ended up scoring. There was that shot from like 25 yards out from oh, what was her name? Jelnik scored that beauty from 25 out. That was a rocket. I got to give her mad props because that was sweet. But at the end of the day, I think the story of that match is Australia kind of giving the game to the U.S. and the U.S. making opponents pay for their mistakes. But kind of examining it more from a U.S. perspective, the really positive takeaway from that is the U.S., I think, did a good job of making Australia pay for their mistakes. And that's, I think, one of the signs of a good team. If you are a good team, you don't let your opponent off the hook when they make those mistakes. And the U.S., I believe, is one of the world's best teams, and they made them pay for those mistakes. So good on them for that. Plus, not only that, but seeing Megan Rapinoe and Carli Lloyd each get a brace in what could be perhaps their final major tournament matches of their careers. Jury's still out on that. I could totally see Carli Lloyd wanting to play till the next World Cup, but it was really cool to see them at least go out on a high if this was it for them, because one, they get a medal. I think a medal is a really positive result, and two, they go out with having a big piece in the pie for that particular result. So a way for the veterans to really step up in this game and kind of bring it home for the team, I think speaks volumes about their character as players and how well that they've been playing this game for such a long time. So good on both of them for that. One little fun fact about this game too, I believe it was in this match. Let me double check my notes. Yeah, I believe it was in this match where Carli Lloyd earned her 312th cap, which makes her the second all-time leading appearance maker for the United States Women's National Team in history. Of course, Christine Lilly being number one in that regard because she's got 40 more than Carli Lloyd, if you can believe that. But just what a way to cap off a really historic career if Carli Lloyd decides to hang it up for good. So we'll keep our eyes open for that. Some other notes that I wanted to bring up in this game, kind of going past my overall thoughts. I think this game was another case where there were a lot of missed passes, a lot of missed through balls, and it kind of seemed to be the theme of the party for the U.S. this entire tournament. For whatever reason, a lot of their long balls, a lot of their through balls, their basic passing, it just wasn't quite clicking for them, and I think it made it really hard for them to create solid chances, which is probably why they didn't score maybe as often as much as fans are used to seeing, which happens with teams. I don't think that they played their overall best tournament, but it was just a continued trend from the previous game against Canada, and I think it trickled over into the Australia game as well, despite them scoring so much. But like I said, I think it was a lot of the times due to Australia making mistakes. Another thing I wanted to mention too is I noticed Crystal Dunn got forward a lot more in the Australia game than usual. The U.S. typically, what they like to do with their fullbacks is they like to have them assist in the attack. And when Dunn and O'Hara are assisting in the attack and getting forward and sending in crosses, Juliet will typically drop back and sort of play in a three-back between her, Dahlkemper, and Sauerbrunn, Davidson as well, if you throw her into the mix, because she played both of these last two games. But that's at least what I've observed. And by and large in this tournament, they just didn't really do that much. I'll touch on that a little bit later, but good on Dunn for getting forward in this game and being able to get a little bit more creative. The last thing I really want to say about this match was the fact that I think Sam Kerr's performance, and I feel really bad for her in this case, I think her performance was quite wonderful, but unfortunately Vivianne Miedema's was so high in terms of record setting that's going to overshadow Sam Kerr's performance. If I am not mistaken, I believe Sam Kerr had 7 or 8 goals in this match, which would have broken Christine Sinclair's record. Actually, let me back up. Sam Kerr had 7 or 8 goals this tournament, which would have broken Christine Sinclair's previous record of most goals in a single women's Olympic tournament. However, Vivianne Miedema shattered that this tournament with having 10 to Sam Kerr's 7. So I just wanted to bring up Sam Kerr's performance because I think she's still one of the best strikers in the world at the young age of 27, and that she crushed it, and I believe by and large helped Australia get through where they got through in this tournament. So just wanted to bring that up overall, but I guess that's neither really here nor there besides her becoming Australia's all-time leading scorer. So that's all I'll really say about the US and Australia match before moving into my overall thoughts. But my friends, I want to know what you make of the Australia-US bronze medal match. Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. All right, so to kind of end this episode and to end Olympic coverage this time around, which again, sad face, I want to talk about my overall thoughts on the US's bronze medal result, just the tournament in general. I've already talked a little bit about how I think Canada was the really quiet team in this tournament despite having won it. Like I said, I don't think Canada scored more than 2 goals in this tournament, and if they did score 2, I believe it was only one time. I think it was against Chile they scored 2. But for the rest of the tournament, they had a minority of the possession normally, and they let their opponents really have most of the shots too. So they either won games on penalties or they just scored a goal, and they didn't really attract a lot of attention, and they just quietly went through this tournament and ended up winning it all, which I think surprised the hell out of me and a lot of other people. And going into this tournament, I thought, okay, the U.S. is probably going to be one of the favorites. You could make a case for Sweden, obviously, because they're an amazing team, Great Britain as well, but I didn't think Canada really had that much of a shot, and they still managed to get their way up to the top, so good on them for that. It's a big win for them. Now, moving into the U.S. part of this entire equation, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I think that them actually winning the bronze was a very positive note. I know that the expectation for them going into this tournament and really every tournament, and you could make an argument for every game, is to go ahead and win it. But having said that, this being Vlatko's first major tournament, this being a team that was pretty hurt going into this tournament, or recovering from injury, I should say, including Tobin Heath and Juilliard, who had just come off of injuries, and then having a smaller roster size where you didn't quite have as much room to gel with. And then also, on top of that, playing a ton of games only 2 days apart. When you combine all of those things, and despite the U.S. not playing very well, coming away with a bronze medal, I'd say, is a success, just with all those factors in mind. And having said all of that, I want to say that I was surprised because nobody in the team really stood out for me in this tournament. Like, nobody made a giant impact, or at least in my mind. If I had to pick one player to me that probably played the best, and this is a pretty weak argument on my point, I would almost say Roosevelt was probably my favorite for that in this tournament. However, if you came up to me and you told me that Carli Lloyd was better, Megan Rapinoe was better, Juilliard was better, I probably wouldn't argue with you, because nobody stood head and shoulders above the rest of the squad, which was very uncharacteristic for the U.S. Like, nobody really grabbed the bull by the horns and ended up just guiding the team to victory, other than Lloyd and Rapinoe each scoring a double for the team in the bronze medal match. But it was just very uncharacteristic to see for the U.S. And not only that, but I touched upon this earlier, the fact that it didn't really quite seem like they were able to play their game in this tournament. As I've said before, they used to really love to, and I think they still do, love to be on the front foot. They love to attack a lot, and you can really see that evidenced in getting their fullbacks in support and getting in crosses with their central midfielder kind of dropping into a 3-back. But they weren't able to really do that often this tournament, and I don't know if it's just because their opponents had played really, really well, which I would argue that's probably the reason, or if they just ended up changing the game plan before they went to this tournament, which that could be too. I'm going to go with the former on this one. But anyways, when you change the plan, or if other teams are playing really, really well, it's like, wow, since the plan went to hell in that case, I think it really discombobulated them to some extent. I don't think that they got as many clear-cut chances as they're used to having. Sprinkle in a few times of hitting the bar and the post, and that kind of hurts confidence as well. So take that for what you will. But other than that, I want to say that the other thing that really stuck out to me was the 10 goals disallowed that they had due to being offside. I think it really crushed them, because a lot of those offside calls could have been avoided if they just waited just 1 second. Just 1 second. I mean, some of these calls were super, super close. It's not like they were offside by 3-4 feet in these cases, and I think that the forward line was just lacking a little bit of discipline in that respect, and I think it really cost them going down the stretch. I think they were disallowed more goals than they actually scored in this tournament. Let me do some mental math. Actually, no, they scored more goals than they were disallowed. But anyways, the fact that it was that close and the fact that they got to double digits in that respect was pretty uncharacteristic for them. Having said that, I have to give it to them. In the last 2 matches, they were only offside twice. So take that for what it's worth. I think it improved as the tournament went on down the stretch, but in the group stage, it was pretty bad leading into the knockout rounds. So I don't know what the future of the team is going to look like in that respect, but it seems like at least ending the tournament, they got that corrected. But it's still momentum killer overall, especially when you're trying to play in games that you got to win, like in the quarterfinals when they barely won, and in other group stage matches where that were really, really close, like against Australia. It's just those things matter. Those things matter. Another headline I want to mention before wrapping up the episode is I actually want to give mad props to Lynn Williams in the quarterfinals. Without her stellar performance with the goal and the assist, I don't think the U.S. actually wins that game because Vivianne Miedema was on the warpath. But Lynn Williams has been under a lot of scrutiny from a lot of the fandom, myself included at times, and to see her perform well was just really great. It was really nice. I think it was a really excellent moment for her, especially in 2019 when she didn't go to the World Cup and when she was originally an alternate in this case for the Olympics. Seeing her shine and getting her moment, it was just really cool. I support all WOSO players, and if they can perform well, great. And in this case, Lynn Williams' performance against the Netherlands fit that bill. So good on her for that. Really happy she was able to help the U.S. get to the semis, because without her, I don't know if the story would have been the same. Other final thoughts before getting into the end of this episode. It was kind of going back on what I was saying earlier on how nobody in the team really stood out in this case. I want to point out the Mewis sisters. I was actually really surprised to see. I thought Sam Mewis was going to have like a much larger impact, right? Like going into this tournament, I was really high on Sam Mewis. A lot of times people, myself included, viewed her as the world's best going into this tournament, and I don't think she really played all that well. Did she play poorly? Absolutely not. But did she play great? Not really. She didn't play like how I expected her to, I guess. But then again, maybe I should have tempered my expectations going at the door. Maybe it's not fair for me to expect her to score 5-6 goals and have a ton of assists. So, I mean, maybe that's more of a reflection on me than it was on the performance, but I guess I was just surprised to see Sam Mewis not make nearly as much of an impact as I think a lot of us thought she might. Am I picking on her in this case, saying that she performed badly? No, absolutely not. But on the other hand, she didn't exactly play great as well. But then again, you could say the same for the entire team. So take that for what you will, everybody. You could say it for a lot of different players. That's just one that stuck out in my mind. And then also Kristie Mewis, with how well Kristie Mewis had been playing in the aggregate of her matches leading all the way back from November to now. I'm surprised that we didn't see a little bit more of her, especially since the midfield, that being Rose Lavelle, Julie Ertz, Lindsay Horan, and Sam Mewis got a ton of playing time and likely would have benefited from a little bit more rest. I'm surprised we didn't get to see Kristie Mewis a little bit more, especially considering that she, in my mind at least, played pretty well for the entirety of leading up to the Olympics. You can make an argument there's a game or two she didn't play all that well, but I'm just surprised we didn't see her get more minutes in this case. Am I bummed, and do I think it would have made a big difference? Not sure. We'll never know, but I think that she definitely could have helped the squad in that respect, but everybody will have different thoughts on that. Last thing I'll say before wrapping up the episode, I'm curious to see what the future of the team is going to be like now that a lot of these players are starting to get into the twilight of their careers. Arlo White and Julie Foudy talked a little bit about this at the conclusion of some of these games, but in particular, Megan Rapinoe and Carli Lloyd, those are the two big question marks in my mind in terms of will they retire, will they not. Carli Lloyd, I wouldn't be surprised if she wanted to stick around for the next 2 years until the next World Cup. Megan Rapinoe, I'm not sure what she'll do, and I don't think either of them know at this point either. Having said that, I think them winning a bronze and coming out with a bang with them each scoring a brace was a good end to their careers, and they're both very illustrious careers, very high achieving careers. So if we did see them play their last games, I will be forever grateful to them as a fan, because they have brought a lot of joy to us all, especially with Carli Lloyd's performance in the 2015 World Cup and the hat trick, and Megan Rapinoe's performances in the 2019 World Cup. It was a sight to see it. It was very entertaining for all fans to watch, so good on them for that, but I have a feeling we haven't seen quite the last of them. But my friends, I want to know what you make of the overall thoughts, or what are your overall thoughts on the Olympics? Who is your favorite player? Who do you think performed best? Any surprises? What do you think the future of the team is going to be? Whatever you think, you know where the comment section is. Let me know. All right, my friends, so that's going to wrap up Olympic coverage and this episode of Women's Soccer World. Thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Like, comment, and subscribe to see more videos. This has been the Bankrupt Hippo YouTube channel. I've been Bryce, and until next time, have a great day.